Welcome to Talk Moves Civic Engagement in an Uncivil World. Please be sure to live chat along with our workshop on YouTube. You can find the link to this session's live YouTube page on gathering.TheEdCollab.com. We are excited to welcome today for Workshop 3, Catlin Tanis and Vinay Smith-Matsalia.
Hello, everyone. I'm hoping everyone can hear me, but please put it in the chat if you can't. This is Talk Moves Civic Engagement in an Uncivil World. And just a little bit about ourselves before we get started. I'm an educator. I'm a mother of 2 boys, and that's their picture there. We are also big fans of like Comic-Cons and fan expos and anime and everything comics. I'm a supervisor of humanities. I'm an educator collaborative fellow. I'm the associate chair of the conference on English leadership, which is an affiliate of NCTE. I'm also on the NCTE executive board. I'm a romance novel reader, and I just found out that Vinay is a secret romance novelist. So I am loving everything about that. I'm a perpetual dreamer and a lifelong learner.
Good morning. My name is Vinay Smith-Matsalia. I am Kari's mom, one little 8-year-old boy. I'm a reading and avid teacher now after 14 years teaching English. I also teach at UCR School of Education, Educator Collaborative Fellow as well, NCTE Middle Level Steering Committee, Southern California Teachers of English board member, huge nerd. I go to all the Comic-Cons, speak at all the Comic-Cons. Gardening and romance novelist, yes, but you'll never learn my pen name. That's who I am. Nice to meet you.
So in the essence of time, like we are going to go through our slides and we're going to try to interact, but you can take screenshots and obviously the video is available after, so you can always go back to it. But you know what we know about classroom talk, right? Some of the strategies that we all use are, we establish classroom conversation norms. We have sentence starters or discussion starters. We practice revoicing and extending comments. We do wait time. We do, question formulation technique. We notice and wonder, right? We know the benefits of classroom talk. It builds community. It supports thinking. It supports writing. It encourages civic engagement, and it's reality testing, right? Especially when students are online, they're in silos, they're in echo chambers. We want to do that reality testing. What students may need. They may need to develop curiosity versus apathy. They may need to build background knowledge. They don't know what they don't know sometimes. A sense of justice and the ability to recognize injustice when it is happening. They need maybe to learn how to question or ask better questions, or to create essential questions for their own learning. And I'm going to share just a little bit of statistics with you. The U.S. Government Accountability Office most recent data reports that between 2018 and 2019, 1.3 million 12 to 18-year-olds experienced bullying for race, religion, national origin, disability, gender, sexual orientation. The Washington Post reports that hate crimes on K-12 classrooms have risen, and there's a divisive culture. Overall, the number of anti-LGBTQIA plus school hate crimes, authorities say have increased dramatically nationwide, and anti-LGBTQIA plus anti-DEI legislations, targeted book bans, and mandates like Don't Say Gay have had tremendously negative impacts on our students and our schools. And what does that show us? Like when we look at the collective data, we know that we need to practice having complex conversations, having conversations where our students are learning about each other and growing the empathy and knowledge that they need to navigate an ever diversified world. And the more teachers avoid difficult topics, the less engaged in the civic space young people will become, Friedman says. And the role of schools in a democracy, including English teachers, is to teach young people to grapple with these kinds of tensions. And so I wonder, what difficult topics, and I put difficult topics in quotes because these are difficult topics. They are often conversations about people's identities, who people are. They're complex topics, but they're not difficult. But I put it in quotes. What difficult topics are being avoided in our classrooms? And why are we avoiding those topics? Vinay, do you want to jump in?
Okay, I will jump in. So, beginning with some common norms and agreements, listening to understand, not to respond. These are things that we do so often as teachers in the classroom. We already set these pieces up. Sharing your view and letting others share their view, teaching them to seek clarity, teaching them it's okay to agree, disagree, albeit disrespect or not disrespectfully. That's because I'm a middle school teacher, and disrespectfully is kind of the norm. Albeit respectfully, using I or my statements, teaching them how to say I feel when you, because, or I believe, or this is my perspective, instead of framing every thought they have as a fact or the truth. And sometimes teachers, we have to be the ones to also do that, because we can also sometimes be the ones who forget to use the I statements and the my statements. And now that we've looked at a couple of these suggestions, let's go to our chat and see, is there anything missing? What are some more suggested norms that we could do and throw in there? I think I see a few things up in the chat. We have Beth Puma saying grappling is a skill. Oh, we've got it on the scale. Difficult is a euphemism for people who are uncomfortable. Yes to the air quotes. Yes, ma'am. And that is absolutely correct.
Agreed. I love that, Jessica. What is learned here leaves here.
Yes.
So apply what you've learned beyond the classroom. I like that.
And so those are a couple things that are missing. And I want us to make sure during our presentation, we're all kind of engaging with this. While we are the ones presenting, we know we're presenting to educators, and each of us has experience, and we're all experts in this in our own way. So we want to share our expertise. So don't feel like you need to be quiet. Please engage. We love to talk with you.
And we know that we have to scaffold and support these, especially as our students are developing those skills. We want to practice structured dialogue, which Vinay will definitely walk us through. And we want to intellectually challenge our students through discussion. We want to use sentence stems to support disagreeing respectfully. And we want to reflect on the impact of tone, language, and word choice in academic discourse. And the next two slides are a group of sentences I taught high school, I now supervise, but a lot of my questions are geared towards the higher group. When I say higher, meaning older students. So a lot of these questions may be a little bit complex, or you're thinking, how do I use this with a third grader? Or how do I use this with a fifth or sixth grader? I do believe that we can scaffold our students into these questions, especially when they become part of the fabric of our classrooms. But you can also simplify a little bit. Maybe the students would not say, I want to make sure I understand your perspective correctly, but they might say something else that does exactly that. So, feel free to take a screenshot, and of course the video will be available to you after. But think about what questions you ask for clarifying understanding. What questions do you ask for expressing a different perspective? What questions do you ask to acknowledge emotion or experience? And what questions do you ask when you're challenging ideas respectfully? I love the first one, what evidence supports that view? And I have a student who always says, as evidenced by what, right? So asking kids to really question when something is questionable, question it. There are questions for addressing harmful language, but there are so many more, right? This is just a sampling, finding common ground, de-escalating tension, and of course, reflective academic discussion stems, right? Just the regular building on your point. I'd like to complicate that idea but making sure that our students are always questioning and that they have the language to question.
And what I love about that is those sentence stems are all very, very scalable. I use very similar sentence stems in the middle school with 7th and 8th graders and in my reading classes. These are not something that can be like, oh, that's just for high school only. No, my 12-year-olds use very, very similar. Young kids are capable of handling complex things. We just have to give them the tools to get through them. So I love the entire process of all of these, because this can help you build a bank that you can use based on your age group. We're going to talk a little bit about decentering. Sometimes we feel like these topics are different than our pedagogy, but it's not. We're going to do the same thing we do in a pedagogically sound curriculum, and we're going to start with the end in mind. Know where you want to go, and then work from there. So I always want to pose the question, what if we didn't wait for these discussions to happen before we plan them? So a lot of the times we have these things that it's like, what do I do once the conversation? Don't wait. Why wait until the bad conversations come up? Why we need to plan in advance. We know our children are exposed to the real world. We know that. This is not something that we can avoid. So if we know that, then we can start building these pieces of civil discourse into our learning processes, build it into our classroom, and create systems to address them far in advance. We don't want to react to negative things. We want to make sure that we prevent them from happening as much as possible, and not even prevent them, but when they do happen, we want them to be able to happen in a way that is going to prepare them for life in the real world, so that they learn how to not be stuck in their silos, in their echo chambers, and they know how to engage when things get uncomfortable. So as it says here, I'm sorry, were you speaking, Kathleen?
No, I'm nodding along. I'm agreeing.
When we build civic discourse into our learning classroom environments, we create systems to address them. So even if you don't plan for political or polarizing lessons, and you're a second grade teacher, like my son is a second grader, reality is things are going to happen. This year, some kids said some not nice things in my son's classroom about race, and he's 8. I don't think his teacher planned for that. And so, but when you do plan ahead, we can build those thought processes in. So I have 3 questions I want to pose. Even if we didn't plan them, what would happen if we built thought process into our classroom expectations? We created opportunities to practice this in low stakes environments, and we built learning that requires authentic engagement in a way that protects children. Those 3 things. So we're going to have a quick conversation. We're going to do 1 minute. I've got my timer set. And for 1 minute, I just want us to think about this. Just take a moment and sit with those 3 things, and we're going to sit with them. And for 1 minute, we are going to just process what those 3 things would look like. We're starting now. And yes, I am using the classroom strategy of making you sit and have time to think. I'm still a teacher. "30 more seconds. "10 more seconds. Thank you for taking time to sit with your thoughts and engage here. So next up we're going to do is we want to do a quick waterfall inside of our chat box in whichever format that you're in. And we're going to answer some of those questions. Whatever we came up with, we want you to type in your answer. And when I say go, we're going to waterfall the chat. You're just going to hit the enter button. You type it while the music plays, but you do not hit enter until I tell you to stop when the music goes. So whatever thoughts you had on those 3, we're going to start typing them in, and that's going to be on our next slide. Got it, Kat? Hold on, guys. As per usual, something doesn't work right. There you go. All right, so she is going to start our waterfall music and push play. And while that's on, I want you to type to your heart's content. And when the music stops, we're all going to hit enter and drop our comment in at the same time. Are we all ready?
I'm not sure about the music part.
That's okay. I can do another 1 minute timer. You have 1 minute starting now. Please start typing. Do not hit enter.
The video is not playing at my end.
No worries.
Okay.
The timer is already going.
Awesome.
I didn't know we were going to be on StreamYard. I was assuming a different thing. So I know the slides tend to be static on StreamYard. All right, in 5 more seconds, we are going to all drop in whatever comments or thoughts we had on those 3. 5, 3, 1. Go ahead and hit enter and let's see what we have. Let's see what thoughts we came up with in our comments. Oh, current events. I do like that. Current events comes from, it comes from Kevin. That was you.
It was me.
Yes. Even questioning routines based on headlines from articles, even social media. Yes. Reading an article, viewing. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Beth. Giving them an opportunity to talk about what's happening. Doing current events used to be a regular thing. I know I'm aging myself, but it used to be a regular thing in the classroom, and it doesn't have to go away. Having students engage with what's going on in the world around them teaches them how to gauge in the things that's happening in the world around them. Building in times daily and weekly for Classroom Cafe, open conversations. Oh, I love that.
I like that. Yeah.
Yes.
I also like the use of social media, Beth, because so many of our kids are getting all of their information from social media. How do we leverage their intense attention in social media in the classroom? And how do we create connections between what we're teaching and what they're viewing in real time?
That is so great.
Classroom Cafe sounds fancy. I like it.
I know it takes the restorative conversations and makes it sound like you can do it with like a nice cup of coffee and some nice music playing. I love that. Very, very nice. All right, let's go. I am going to give you guys a couple things that I've done to help with this. One thing that I've done to build thought process into classroom management is decolonizing social skills. You know, we all have our schools processes and rules and PBIS and different things we use. And I use them, but I also have learned to decolonize them a little bit so we can start to find ways to help students have healthier conversations that don't center the adult. Like having a conversation, social skill, look at the person, use a pleasant voice, listen to what the other person has to say. When there's a break in the conversation, ask the question and share your thoughts. That centers the person, which is normally the teacher. It has a power structure to it, and it teaches them that we engage by removing ourselves and it's making ourselves secondary. So I changed mine a little bit. I want you to engage with the speaker. You are not in a one-way conversation. Engage. You have a right to use your voice and speak. Listen to what the other person has to say. That's not going to change because I want to always center listening. You'll see how you use a pleasant voice because we sometimes have those politics so that you have to sound nice. And I can say something horrible to you and you have to remain pleasant. And I don't want that to be in my classroom. And so I reframe that you don't have to be nice because that's nice is not a requirement. Respect is a requirement. Mm-hmm. Healthy is a requirement. Not nice. Use healthy dialogue cues. Those are like the sentence stems that Kathleen showed us a minute ago. Using those dialogue cues, this is how we have the conversation. Honor every voice, including your own. So we're going to hear each other and you're going to hear me too. So I'm not going to honor you over me and you're not going to honor me over you. And then the key one for my classroom is do no harm. No matter what we're talking about at the end. If what you're saying is harmful to anyone, you have violated our conversation expectations. Yeah. We can talk without being harmful. We can, even if we are completely disagreed. We don't have to be in disagreement and attack one another. The do no harm is not the same thing as do not hurt my feelings. What I said was not harmful, but you still felt some kind of way. That's something for you to process. And that's something for you to think about. If my words were harmful, if they were not harmful, but if you took harm away from something, that's a fact. Because again, I teach middle school. We have to do for whenever we have these discussions, they have to have facts. It has to be backed by evidence. I'm an English teacher, so that leads those conversations. Low stakes practice. This is how you get them started. You start teaching them how to have these conversations right away. This is my first day of school conversation slide in my rules and procedures. I teach them how to talk to their upper partner, how to introduce themselves, how to address each other with respect and with kindness, making sure that even with this one, what's your name, or what do you prefer to be called? We start our dialogue that way on the very first day of school. Building in low stakes chances to practice conversation is extremely important because we assume our kids know how to do that. Mm-hmm. But those are skills that you learn over time. And if we're not giving them time to practice, we cannot assume they're getting them somewhere else. And moving on to the next one, more low stake processes. I like to do them a little higher stakes because, again, middle schoolers, if you ain't know anything about teenagers, boy, they like to argue. And I set up in my argument unit chances for them to argue about something low stakes before we get to the really high stakes one, which you'll see in the next slide. We do Apple versus Android. And the kids, they will fight to the teeth about that. And then I give them sentence stems about how to build that argument, how to argue about your side respectfully. Xbox versus PlayStation. The one that gets the kids the most hype for some reason is pineapple on pizza. That one, you got to be real careful. You'll start a civil war in your classroom. In California, so pizza or tacos is a real thing. We are a taco place here. So the pizza versus taco debate goes really far, and these are fun and silly, low stakes way to practice these debates, because what you'll see on the next slide is this is the same unit. This is what our unit is about. They're going to be learning about injustice in U.S. history. And we're going to be talking about the Taino people and Christopher Columbus. They're going to be talking about Andrew Jackson and Indigenous Americans. They're going to talk about enslavement of African people, the civil rights movement, the Chicano rights movement, the Japanese internment. They're going to be talking about these real tough things, and they're going to be writing an argument. But we center those conversations first by practicing how do we argue things? How do we argue things correctly and respectfully? We also, I right here towards the bottom, it says we will all have to commit to discussing it respectfully with maturity and to avoid saying and doing anything that might offend or hurt anyone else. We will be having courageous conversations this month. In this classroom, we will never argue for or justify hurting people for any reason ever. This will require maturity. And so I set this up saying we're never going to be on the side of injustice. We're never going to be on the side of, well, slavery was good for America because, or, well, it was okay for him to do that to the Taino people because, no, that's not what our argument is. What they're arguing is did this injustice happen because of bias and hatred, or did it happen because of financial gain? Those are the only two things we're allowed to argue. We're not arguing what is good and what is bad. We only have those two arguments because those other things invalidate people's pain. And I set my unit up that way. And as teachers, if we put these things, this is a tough one, right? Like having these kind of conversations can be scary. But if you frame them and you intentionally build it in, and you give yourself time to build all those skills so the kids are ready when we get there.
So we think about civic engagement and how it requires that students know things and care about things and be curious about things. And those are the most important things, like when you have a classroom of students who are preparing to learn, how do we foster that curiosity in our students? And I love what Vinay just said. We are not arguing about like whether slavery, we are arguing about whether this was for financial gain or whether this was based on bias and hatred. So they make our kids curious about the right things. How do we teach justice and care? We want to make sure that our kids have the literacy, the racial literacy to understand that something is happening and I have the language to speak to it. It's not just, oh, I recognize that this is wrong, but how are we preparing our students with the language to speak when they notice that thing happening, the bias, the injustice, when they notice that this mindset or this perspective is wrong, and they should question as much as they answer. So much of our classroom is we're asking questions and they're answering. When are we asking them to question? Just sit, let's look at this painting, let's read this passage, and just come up with questions. And there are three types of student curiosity, right? There's the epistemic curiosity where it drives deep understanding. They're wondering why something is happening. There's the perceptual, right? Where it grabs their attention, like, hey, what's going on here? And there's the diversive, right? Like what else is over there, right? The question to look beyond. And this is where kids might be tempted to go do research or to go look up something because they're thinking in the diversive. So I think about like all of the things we don't know, right? So I've taught the American Revolution, and I think there are very few textbooks, and I'm going to say I haven't seen one that talks about the role of women in the American Revolution. It's almost like women didn't exist until 1919 or 1918, whenever that comes up, or Betsy Ross somewhere at the very beginning, right? But what roles did they play? Did they know that women were spies? Did they know that women dressed as men and fought? What roles did Indigenous and Black people play during the American Revolution? Do they know that there was a battalion of 500 Haitians who came and helped America fight for their own freedom? Like, do they talk about the Battle of Savannah? Do they know that the statues is still there? When you read The Crucible as a literature teacher, do we ask, was Tituba Black? What do the historical documents say about her? And when did she become Black in that whole narrative? And what is scapegoating? Now, when we recognize that Tituba has been rebranded, what is scapegoating and why was it okay to do this? And let's look at the time that the play was published. Let's look at Arthur Miller in general. When we read about the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, who is covered in all that language? Who is missing? And then you get to talk about like things like gender and race and immigration and all of the things that the 14th Amendment does not address. And then we need to think about our own teacher learning. I was going to take a minute, but we're running out of time, so we're not going to take a minute. So I'm just going to leave you with the question: what does our continued learning look like? Often we go to graduate school or we go to undergrad and we learn these things and we become teachers, and then our whole lives become like revolve around grading and reading what the kids are reading, which is great. But how are we continuing to learn as new research comes out, as our student needs change? How are we continuing to learn? Are we asking ourselves the question of what don't we know? As teachers in the room, teaching history, teaching literacy, teaching novels, what are the parts of that background and that context that we don't know? And how do we go about finding out more?
Which is kind of frames the conversation of widening our gaze, which we're not going to have a whole bunch of time to get into. And I do this with both teachers and students. With every text, we need to widen our gaze, similar to what Catlin was talking about. We talk about who is in this text. We can skip to the next two slides, actually, and I'll just get to the explanation piece. I start with a single picture, and then we widen it to see who was left out. Every single text we look at, we always want to ask, who is centered in this text? What biases might be centered in the voice that's being centered? What voices are missing here? Like what she did with the American Revolution. I actually teach the American Revolution that way. The history teacher teaches the classic way, while I'm having them look at Latino people, indigenous, and things like that. So it does happen someplace. It's not a lot, though.
Yeah.
What value could be missing from the voices that we can add to this? What misunderstandings could the centered voice have that the missing voice can clarify? And who benefits from this centering and this exclusion? These are questions that kids can ask at a very young age, very, very young. You can ask even with looking at the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Whose perspective is this about? I wonder what would happen if we asked Baby Bear's perspective. These are things that we can start very, very young, so kids can start thinking about these civic engagement pieces, and so they won't be difficult when they become grown-ups, when they become voters, when they're part of the real world. We can help them learn to decenter their own perspectives and hear and see the world, others around them, and put all those things together to come up with a real, true understanding, to truly engage in critical thinking, which is the job of the English classroom, and literacy in general is teaching our students to be critical thinkers.
I love what you said about like just having kids wonder where were these other people, where were these other voices? And it is that, you know, what else is over there? We need to know what else is over there when we are teaching history, when we're teaching literature, when we're teaching current events. What else is over there? So I think definitely helping our students understand that civic engagement requires curiosity, and it requires that they have a quest to know. So I think this is it for us. Thank you so much for hanging with us, and we hope this was useful to you.
Thank you both so much. So many thoughtful questions, so many thoughts running through my mind. And I know folks who are watching live with us in the chat were inspired by your thought-provoking questions. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you both so much. And for our audience who joined us, thank you again for your participation and support of today. If you feel inspired by this session, please visit our charity page to pay the joy forward. Coming up next, we have workshop 4, live now, I believe. Option 1, you have our founding director, Christopher Lehman, and option 2, simultaneously streaming, we have Dr. Cindy Gerwin with books on change makers. Thank you for joining us again today. You can find the rest of our schedule at gathering.theedcollab.com.